So I'm always very mesmerized by this culinary herb. So they have these very nice textured leaves. Right? You can see the grooves, you can see the bumps on the leaves, right? And they are velvety, right? They have these tiny hairs on the surface, and it's very nice to touch. Right? It gives off a very pleasant smell when you rub the leaves between your fingers. And yes, I'm talking about the sage plant, right? The one that you use it in your dishes. So they are actually cousins of the mint plant. So bet you didn't know that. So how can we actually grow sage at home, right? Are they easy plants to grow? Can you put them in a normal kitchen garden? So I think sage, they are pretty easy to grow and they are great additions, right? They are perfect plants for any kitchen gardens. So it seems like, when you have sage plants in your kitchen garden, you are almost like a professional chef, right? Because we always see, the sage in many of these dishes in these very nice restaurants, right? So I think the harder part about growing sage is that they are very difficult to propagate. So the success rate for stem cuttings is pretty low, right? They are very hard to root. Right? I tried many cuttings and only like one or two actually root. But actually you can make it easier by using rooting powder like rooting hormones and things like that, right? So how can we grow sage at home? So just like many other plants, we can always use the grow method, right? The grow method is the ultimate way to gauge how to grow a particular plant well. So all we need to do is to understand the necessary growing conditions. Right? With that understanding, we can then recreate the perfect environment for them. So, and the perfect environment for any plants, right, is of course where they are found in the wild, right, with their natural habitat. So, with a little bit of research online, you can Google, you can read about the plant, right, you'll find out that sage is a Mediterranean plant. So, it lives like on the slopes, on the grassy slopes in Italy and things like that, right? So, just like your favorite rosemary and thyme and mint. So, most likely, sage will grow well in those very similar growing conditions. So, and we look at the photos online, right? We go and search Google for the photos. We will see that, we can actually understand their growing conditions in greater detail, right? So, using the grow method, we will be able to look at these 5 growing conditions. That will be light, water, humidity, potting media, and feeding. So if we can recreate, right, we can reduplicate, right, duplicate the exact same growing condition as what they have in the wild, you can definitely grow your sage very well. Or you can grow any plants very well, right, by all these understanding these 5 growing conditions. So the first condition we look at is light. So here are some photos of sage growing in the wild. So can you see that they are exposed to direct sunlight? And yes, growing them will be required to be under full sunlight, right? That will be the most ideal. Partial sunlight, maybe 4 to 6 hours may work, but you expect slower growth. So next, look at water, right? If you look carefully at the soil in the photos, right, you can see this bare soil in the photos, right? They look pretty dry, and that's the usual Mediterranean environment. So we will only want to water them when the topsoil looks dry, right? To replicate the same kind of growing condition. So next we look at humidity. Right? In the photos, you can see that they are pretty much very exposed to the environment. So there are not many tall plants or trees around to block the winds and things like that, right? So they have more exposure to winds and that means there will be lower or fluctuating humidity levels. So actually sage can actually be grown in a very low humidity environment or some places with breezy, right? A bit of breeze and things like that, like your balconies or a window. Right? So that will be ideally for sage. So how about potting media? So if you look at the soil, right, it looks sandy and dry, right? It's very gritty, right? So ideally, you want to grow them in similar type of soil. So you'll use a very draining potting media, right? Such as burnt earth with compost or even with sand with compost. Right? That will ensure that the soil is draining, it doesn't retain a lot of water and keep the roots dry. And at the same time, the compost will provide the necessary nutrients for the sage. So the last condition we look at that will be feeding, right? So you will see plant matter on the ground in the photos, right? So fertilizers will be necessary, right? So you'll probably use something like growth fertilizers like Osmocote or other growth fertilizers for leaves and generic growth. So normally I will use half the recommended amount for a start. Since herbs, right, these herbs are very small, delicate plants, so I want to try with a smaller amount first and monitor and see how it goes. So these are the 5 growing conditions that you want to recreate in your garden. So choose the right spot, right? Use the right soil, water them appropriately, right? You touch the soil if it's very dry, okay, it's time to water, and the water will drain out very quickly because you're using draining soil. So you see, just by studying the growing conditions, you will actually know how to grow them well. So that's the power of the grow method. And you can apply this method to any plants you want to grow, right? Any plants this method is applicable. So if you like this video, make sure you subscribe, right, so that you don't miss out any of many of these latest videos that I put up on a regular basis. So go ahead and implement the grow method. Try it for yourself, right? See how it works for yourself. Right? I don't want you to just watch my videos and know how I did it. Use it to your advantage, right? Use it so that you can also become a better gardener. So comment below and let me know how my videos have helped you, or how this growth method has helped you to transform your gardening journey. So enjoy your gardening, and I will see you soon.